right? You have all these pregnancy hormones and then whoosh, they come crashing down. It's really, I think nurses don't realize that they say this, oh, there's not milk, right? And then they don't realize the impact that it's having on people, because people take that and 3 weeks later.
I am just amazed and kind of taken aback, because this is something we need to talk in the hospital, in the postpartum recovery ward.
Yeah. Until they've regained their birth weight and you can see that they're kind of trending, I generally recommend being a little bit more cautious. Do I recommend feeding the baby every 2 hours? No. So I came across a study a while ago that showed that in babies who are breastfed had higher cortisol. And I said, no. The actual result of this study is that
Hey mamas, welcome back to Momsibilities. This episode is very close to my heart. We are going to talk about breastfeeding today. If you're pregnant, if you're a nursing mom, if you plan to breastfeed your baby, or if you're going to do combination of pumping, breastfeeding and bottle feeding, this episode is for you. I am joined by Dr. Sarah, who is a naturopathic doctor. She's a doula. She is an international board certified lactation consultant, and she is founder of Downtown Doula. We'll be talking about everything breastfeeding, and I will be having a lot of questions that all new moms have. We will have all of them answered by Dr. Sarah today. Welcome to Momsibilities, Dr. Sarah. I'm so glad that you're here with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
To start with, I want to know, how did you get into becoming a lactation consultant?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. So I started off in naturopathic college, and the co-founder of our business, Dr. Olivia, was like, there's a doula training course on the weekend. Maybe you'd like to do it. And I was like, it's close to my house. There's a discount for students. Sure, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. And then the second birth that I went to, the mom really struggled with breastfeeding, and I was like, I have absolutely no idea how to help you. So in all of the naturopathic training I had, we had like a little bit about breastfeeding, but like not enough to be able to help this person with their feeding. And so I saw this really big gap in care. So that was when I decided to do the lactation training, and then I also am I do infant craniosacral therapy, which is like a very gentle form of infant massage, because while I was seeing lactation clients, I was seeing like babies often have tension. And so I went down the rabbit hole and did that training as well. And it's really just, I'm very passionate about babies, very passionate about like the transition into motherhood and parenthood. And so I just like the more I'm in practice, like the deeper into it I'm getting.
So basically you went for something, you found out something else they needed help with.
Yes.
Then you ended up learning that.
Yes.
And then you figured out there's another thing.
Yeah.
How beautiful is that?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. So I always say it's like a lot of titles that all just mean that I really love
I know.
babies.
I was like, I want to make sure that I'm telling everything that that all of your
it's just I'm like very into babies and postpartum and pregnancy. That's really all it means.
I love it. And you learned everything, and you went to university before you had your babies, right?
Yes.
How was your experience, your personal experience, if there's anything that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was very lucky. I was very lucky that I had a lot of knowledge when I had just graduated. I was graduating when I got pregnant with my first, and so I was already doing my lactation training when I had him. And I think it was nice that I had a lot of knowledge, but it was still not the same as helping somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I remember, like, I've talked to people about this, but it's very different when you do it for yourself. And so even for me, like, the transition was like, you know, I had things that I was uncertain about, and maybe I'm misreading the situation and I'm not really sure what to do here, because, you know, I've helped other people with their babies, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same for me and my baby,
right.
Because every baby is different, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always, and even with the second, right?
Mm-hmm.
You think you know what to do with the baby, and then you have another baby and you're like, oh no, this is a different human, so then
Really?
It's different, right?
I mean, every day I'm thinking, like, when we think about the second one, I will know it all. Probably I should stop
No,
telling
you won't,
myself
you won't.
that. Oh God, yeah.
And
Every
it's
baby is different.
every baby's different.
Like every pregnancy is different. Every mom's journey is different. We cannot think of the next baby to have
And you
same.
do know some things, right? You
Yeah.
know how to change
I
a
mean, you're
diaper. You
prepared.
know what a feeding cue looks
Yeah.
like. These are, but then what your baby does to soothe
Yes,
is going to
exactly.
be different than what the next baby does to soothe. And some things will work like a charm for your first
Yeah.
that just do not work for your second.
It's best to always expect the unexpected.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of things around breastfeeding that moms struggle with, and they are in constant search for answers.
Yes.
One thing that is really, stuck with me, because I also speak to a lot of moms when I'm planning to bring them on my podcast. And many of them who struggled with their breastfeeding initially have one thing in common. They say that they did not get the milk right away. So first of all, I want to understand this, and also I want to talk about this so that the moms can understand what's the reason behind it, because they end up feeling like they failed.
Yes.
It's something that they blame themselves for. So what are your thoughts on this exactly?
Yeah, I mean, it's very rare for someone to actually not have milk there. That is very rare. To perceive that there's not milk is different than actually not having milk. And what I mean by that is that your body starts to produce colostrum around 20 weeks postpartum. 20 weeks pregnancy, yes.
Wow.
So like about halfway through the pregnancy, you're already starting to produce colostrum.
Yes.
Unless you have something in your history, like maybe you've had surgery on your breasts or something like this, or hormonal issues, maybe you had like PCOS before you got pregnant, that kind of thing. There's no real reason to assume that you're not producing colostrum. But there's a difference between producing it inside the breast and getting it out. And so lots of things in the early postpartum can impact whether or not you can get it out. So for example, if you've had an epidural, they give you a lot of fluid with an epidural.
Okay.
You get the epidural, but you also get a bag of fluid. And if you have an epidural for a long time, you can have lots of bags of fluid.
Okay.
And then what can happen is because you're swollen, you get swollen, right? So you can't see your ankles anymore. Your breasts are also swollen, and that swelling, because colostrum is really thick, it's really viscous, it's really hard to move, and there's not very much of it because it's very nutrient rich. Your baby doesn't need very much.
Yeah.
So if there's all this swelling, then the baby's just, or the pump or whatever you're doing is just moving the fluid around and not the colostrum. And so then maybe you're hand expressing or maybe you're pumping and it looks like nothing's there, but in actual fact, it's just that there's so much fluid that what's there is having a hard time getting out. So that's one piece. And other things in like if you have like Pitocin in labor or things like that, all of those things can impact whether or not you can see the colostrum coming. And then the other thing is that sometimes...
I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt.
Yeah, please.
Because I just understood what you said right now. When somebody is taking Pitocin, it can impact whether they will get the colostrum out.
Yes.
But it's going to be there anyway.
Yes. So getting it out and having it be there are two different things.
So I think a lot of moms think that it was never there.
Yes.
And I want to say it out loud, and thanks for telling me this, because I was not aware about it too, that it is there. We should not assume that, I am not doing it. I'm failing. Did I do something wrong?
Yes.
No,
And I think it's really common for people to have it because they try to hand express or a nurse is trying to hand express for them and nothing comes.
Yeah.
They assume that means there's no milk. But getting the milk out and having the milk be there are two different things. I know.
Not talking about this in the hospital.
I don't know. And I think I think nurses don't realize that they say this, there's not milk, right? And then they don't realize the impact that it's having on people, because people take that and 3 weeks later they're like, there's not milk. And it's like, no, it was just in this one moment, the milk wasn't coming.
Right.
And then also like, especially if you've had like a C-section or other complications during labor, maybe it'll take a little bit of extra time for the colostrum to transition into mature milk.
Yeah.
But again, that doesn't mean that there's no milk, right?
Yeah, right.
And so all of these things, it's very, very rare for someone to have no milk whatsoever. It's very, very common for interventions to make the milk more hard to get, or not to come in as fully as you need, like to decrease supply, or to make it hard for the baby to get. But that doesn't mean that there's no milk there.
I think we can say that it is very common. It is not common for milk not to be there at all, but it is very common for people to believe that there is no milk.
Yes,
And
yes.
also these new moms are made to believe that you don't have
Yes,
milk.
and actually,
And it is so sad.
It's so sad because the two most common reasons to stop breastfeeding are pain and perceived low milk supply. Not actual low milk supply, perceived low milk supply. So yeah, it's very common, and it's not always true.
And this is so sad. I mean,
It's so sad.
I'm hearing it from you. All these things that I see on social media
Yeah.
are just about how can you boost your milk,
Yes.
what are the foods you have to eat, what is the pattern that you have to follow. But nobody talks about that. No matter where are you in your journey right now, you have milk.
Yes.
It's
yeah.
gonna come. It
Yes.
might take time, different time for different moms.
Yeah.
But it'll come. And
Yeah.
it's so sad because a lot of moms just accept and then they don't try enough, I believe, right?
Yeah,
They just go to formula.
And then if you do end up doing, if you're doing bottles really early or whatnot, like, or if there's trouble with latching or all these things, like I always say, the earlier you can get help,
Yeah.
the better it's going to be, because there are lots of things you can do at like 2 days postpartum, 4 days postpartum, 10 days postpartum. But if you get to like 5 months postpartum and you want to start breastfeeding again, like that's a much more different scenario than if you're working on it at like 3 days postpartum, you know?
I am just amazed and kind of taken aback because this is something we need to talk in the hospital, in the postpartum recovery ward.
Yeah.
I wish it changes over time.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
And then, so we just spoke about how every mom has milk, but they need time for the milk to flow, right? A lot of moms, including myself, I was thinking like, okay, how much milk should I have? I gave birth, I have my baby.
Yep.
So I want to firstly understand, is he getting milk, right? And then for the latch and everything, we have a lot of support.
Yep.
The nurses help in the hospital. We do get a lactation expert. They come and check on the latch and everything.
Yep.
But then we are thinking whether the baby is getting enough, right? And I want to understand in the first few days, let us assume like first few days, then weeks, what is the feeding pattern? How much does the baby really need?
Yeah. Good,
Right?
Great questions. And I think, this is where like people, they're not confident. So they're like, oh, maybe they're hungry. I'll just give them formula. And then that like sends you down the road. And that's not to say like genuinely, sometimes things happen where formula is necessary. And I, for sure, in my practice, I've said, okay, we need to actually supplement this baby right now. So it depends, right? It depends on the specific situation. However, if your baby is latching and the latch is comfortable, the ways to know, especially in the first couple of days, like a typical pattern and what to expect and how to know the baby's getting enough, usually the first like 24 hours, 48 hours sometimes, babies are kind of sleepy, right? Like birth is a big experience for you, it's a big experience for them.
Right.
So they're a little bit like sleepy, and that's okay because babies come with a full tank of gas. And
That's a good way to put it.
Yes, yeah.
Because we were eating before delivering, right?
Yes, yeah, and your body is gonna prioritize the baby over you, right? So they come with a full tank. So if it takes 4 hours, 6 hours to like really get a good latch, that's not really a problem.
Okay.
And just skin to skin, right? Like skin to skin in that moment is gonna help everybody acclimatize to each other, you know? But then after the first 1 to 2 days, they kind of tend to wake up.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, oh, I'm here. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Again, healthy full-term baby, that's typically what happens. And so when you're setting the supply, the easiest time to set your supply is in the first like 1 to 2 weeks postpartum, because you have this absolutely drastic hormonal shift.
Yes.
Right? You have all these pregnancy hormones and then whoosh, they come crashing down. And that primes your body for setting your supply.
Okay.
But your body also doesn't know how many babies you've had. And so that's why it's very common in like the first week to get engorgement, right? Feeling really full, like your boobs are going to explode,
Oh,
right?
gosh, I remember that.
It's because your body's like, is there 2 babies? I don't know. Like, how many babies are we feeding here, right? So you just make all the milk. And it's your baby taking the milk that actually sets your supply. So usually within a few weeks, if you're feeding on demand, your body's like, 1 baby. This is how much this baby needs. This is how much we'll make.
Okay.
And typically, babies for breast milk, the intake is kind of set by around 1 month old. So obviously, like, we're all humans. We have days where we're more hungry and days where we're less hungry. So it kind of, up and down a little bit. But the average feed for breast milk is between 2 and 5 ounces, or like 60 to 150 ml. But it stays that way for the whole time you're breastfeeding. So a 1 month old takes 60 to 150 ml. A 6 month old takes 60 to 150 ml. A 9 month old takes 60 to 150 ml.
Okay.
So and that starts around a month. So it takes about a month for like things to kind of plateau. But the way that your baby sets it is just with feeding on demand. Milk production is supply and demand driven. The more milk you remove, the more milk you make. Ideally, you're just feeding the baby when the baby says they're hungry, and that's going to set your supply.
Okay.
If for whatever reason you have to introduce bottles or supplementation or what have you, that's where the pumping can come in to help, right? Because if you miss a feed because you were giving a bottle, then you pump to replace it. That tells your body, the baby ate just now.
And also, if we don't pump, we're just gonna end up leaking. I mean,
it can be very uncomfortable, right?
But
Yeah. So it sets supply and it also helps keep you comfortable.
Yeah.
But how to know if your baby's getting enough? You're looking at like number of wet diapers in a day, wet and dirty diapers. So you want at least 6 heavy wet diapers in a day. You're looking at their weight gain over time, right? Are they growing? And then you're also looking at like their personality, right? Like, are they rooting around all the time, asking? Are they fussy? What's going on? Do they feed and then they're content afterwards? So those are like the biggest things. And then if you're working with a lactation consultant, you have someone like, you can look to see, okay, I see that the baby's drinking, and someone can show you like, this is what it looks like on the baby when they're drinking. You can hear it, you can see their chin moving, like that's how they're getting milk. But the overall enough, whether or not they're getting enough, is their diaper output, their personality, and their growth.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, because I remember my midwife explaining to me, like, look at the chin moving, and that's something that just stayed with me. And I was like, yeah, he's good.
Yes.
I never doubted. And of course, wet diapers, right?
Yes.
But then when the baby is just born, I know that we were talking about skin to skin, right? I really want to dig deeper into that. I want to know what role that plays between the mom and baby.
Yeah.
Of course, that helps with bonding, we know. But in case of a mom who's not able to have the baby right away, for some complications or be it anything, some moms are not getting the baby right away. Does that affect the mom's supply, like how they're going to produce milk?
It can for sure. But it happens, right? There's complications, whatever, it happens. But the impact of skin to skin, so there's lots of benefits of skin to skin, like for baby, like blood pressure, temperature, heart rate, like all of these things are beneficial. And if the mom's not available right away, partner can do it, and the baby's still going to get all those benefits.
Right.
I was listening to a conference, and someone described skin to skin as like cooking. So you can't expect that you just go into the kitchen and there's food ready. Having your baby skin to skin, they're cooking the meal.
Yeah.
And I really loved that as an analogy,
That's
right?
That's a great analogy.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the smell of them, those little tiny like movements that they make, their breathing sounds, like all of these things are going to boost oxytocin in the parent that's holding them. And so for breastfeeding, that's going to help make more milk more fast, right?
Correct, yeah.
So, but that doesn't go away when you leave the hospital. It doesn't go away after the first, you call it like that golden hour, it doesn't disappear, right? Okay. So lots of times when people are back at home, and especially if things have gone sideways in the hospital, right, you have no control over this. But when you get home, chest naps. We're going to be naked together, right? Just hang out, skin to skin, lots and lots, and it really does make a difference.
I think for baby, absolutely yes, but I think for moms too, because I felt so much better. Like, I did not feel like the pains and everything, and I felt like, oh, this is what I want.
Yeah, because it produces oxytocin, and oxytocin is a pain reliever.
Is it?
Yes, yeah.
I know it's the love hormone.
It's the love hormone, yeah, so it decreases your sensitivity to pain.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing facts, really.
Yeah.
This is something I personally heard in the hospital.
Yep.
My baby was asleep, and it was past 2 hours, and I did not wake him up or started feeding him. And the nurse came in and told me, when did you feed the baby last? I said, about 3 hours. No, you have to feed the baby every 2 hours.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, but the baby's sleeping.
Yeah.
No, you have to feed, period. So I want to understand, for how long do we follow this
Yes. Yeah.
2 hour window?
Yeah. So, I mean, that very much depends on what's going on in the situation, right? Because a healthy baby where there's nothing going on, maybe not as necessary. But if you have a baby who has jaundice, for example, they will sleep through their hunger cues. Like, they're much more likely to just stay asleep. So jaundice, or if you have a preterm baby, or like a baby that has had issues with blood sugar, like all of those things can impact baby's ability to like properly cue. But if you have a healthy baby who's otherwise feeding well, I mean, the kind of like the first 2 weeks, I would say, are a little bit different than after that. It's like the first 2 weeks, because that's when you're at most risk of jaundice, right? Okay. That's when a lot of people are like, I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing here, right? And it's normal. Yeah. It's normal for babies to lose some weight in the first week, right? Up to 10% weight loss is normal for babies, and then they should start to gain. But lots of times you're like, I don't really know. I'm not really sure what's going on. Like, maybe they have jaundice and I'm not sure. So the first 2 weeks, until they've regained their birth weight and you can see that they're kind of trending, I generally recommend being a little bit more cautious. Do I recommend feeding the baby every 2 hours? No. And the reason for that is, a lot of times babies are, and especially if you're combo feeding too, right? If you've tried at the breast for like 45 minutes and then you're topping up and you're giving the baby like a 3-day-old baby like 20 ml of formula, that's like the full feed. Yeah. And then you're trying to do that 2 hours from the start of the feed, but you gave them a full feed 45 minutes in. Do you know what I mean?
I
then
understand.
Another hour after that, they're not going to be hungry.
True.
And even if you've had a good feed at the breast, like maybe they're not going to be hungry right at the 2 hour mark. And then you're going to spend like half an hour getting them naked, changing their diaper, running cold water on them to try and wake them up, where if you just left them for another half an hour, they would have woken up on their own. So I, like, unless there's something else going on, I usually say in those first 2 weeks, like 2 to 3 hours, and don't let it go past like 3 to 4, right? Like, if you get to the 3 hour mark and they're still comatose, right?
Yes.
You give it another half hour, see what happens. Unless that's happening every time, right?
Yeah.
If that's happening every single time, then I'm like, okay, maybe that's not so okay. But once a day, twice a day, for them to go past the 3 hour mark, I would say that's probably fine. And likely they're gonna wake up in like 15 minutes anyways. You know?
I mean, already moms are so exhausted from the birth, and then they're sleepless and everything.
Yes.
This is just something additional that they have to think.
Yeah.
I mean, I was constantly looking at the time clock, like, is it 2 hours? Do I need to feed now? And that's again a stressful thing,
yes.
Right?
And not as long as your baby is rousing you, right? Yeah. And then the flip side of that is, if you're told to feed every 2 hours and you maybe have a baby who's cluster feeding, which is a way that they bring your milk in, is to feed frequently, they'll cluster feed. Maybe they're actually hungry at the 1 hour mark, and then you spend an hour being like, but it's not been 2 hours yet, you can't eat yet, right? And so there's both sides of that cannot be so great, right? Yeah.
So just listen to your instinct and your baby.
Listen to the baby, yeah.
Does stress affect the milk supply too? Because it's very stressful, right?
Yes.
Right after birth, you have like all kind of things going on, especially with baby blues and postpartum depression. So many mood disorders, like a lot of moms go through. So what happens if a mom is very stressed? Does that also affect the milk supply?
Yeah. I mean, breastfeeding when it's working is protective against postpartum depression. I would say like when it's working, because if you're freaking out about the breastfeeding not working, then that's going to make it worse. But if breastfeeding is going well, it's actually protective. So investing in help early is protective against postpartum depression. I'm always a little bit cautious about how I speak about this, because yes, stress can impact, maybe chronic stress can impact supply, but like situational stress is much more likely to impact the flow of milk. Because cortisol and oxytocin do not play well together. And oxytocin is what regulates your milk flow. So the more you're like all feeling like, I love this baby, I'm so relaxed, this is all great, the more your milk flows. The more you're like, oh my God, are people watching me? What's going on? Less milk flows, right?
Exactly.
However, it's not realistic to expect that we're just going to always be in this like oxytocin high bubble all the time. It's not, no baby would survive if that was what we needed, right?
Yeah.
And so usually what I say is like, yes, stress is a factor. And if you're in a situation where maybe you're out for the first time or at a doctor's office, or you have people in your house that are not normally in your house, probably it's not going to be a great feed.
Yes.
That's normal. It's
Agreed.
totally normal. And what's most likely to happen is that your baby is going to recover from that later, and you might have some cluster feeding later. You might have where they wake up more overnight than they usually do, just to compensate, right?
I get it, yeah.
And that's fine. It's totally fine and
And like
normal.
you said, oxytocin and cortisol don't go well together, right?
Yeah.
I've also recently come across a lot of posts on social media. Social media can be good, but it can
could
be
also
equally
be
bad,
bad,
right?
yes, yeah.
And it's about how breastfeeding moms are like having a lot of stress, and it's also because they are breastfeeding.
Sure, yeah.
Is it true that as much as it increases oxytocin, does it also increase cortisol in moms?
So it can be stressful. It absolutely can be stressful. However, and this is one of those things that I think is really interesting about research, because research doesn't always place breastfeeding as the norm. And the way that we speak about it doesn't always place breastfeeding as the norm. So I came across a study a while ago that showed that in babies who are breastfed had higher cortisol. And I said, no. The actual result of this study is that babies who are formula fed have lower cortisol. And we don't know that that's necessarily a good thing, right? If higher cortisol is the biological norm, then what's happening in these babies that's lowering it, and what's the potential risk of that?
Yeah, I mean, just because the ones who are formula fed have low cortisol doesn't really mean
That it's a good thing.
breastfed, and also that the breastfed would have high cortisol, right?
Yeah, so they did. There was difference, right? So there was higher in the breastfed baby, lower in the formula fed babies.
Okay,
but there's
there's
an assumption there that higher is bad.
Got it.
Right?
Got it.
But that's not necessarily the case. We have to assume that what's happening in the breastfed baby is supposed to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Right? So is there stress with breastfeeding? Yes. Is there cortisol associated with breastfeeding? Yes. But that's normal. It's
Yeah.
normal, right?
That should be, it could be the part of process. That's what people have been doing for ages, right?
yeah.
And those babies are fine and thriving.
Yes, yeah. All the evidence that we have suggests
Yeah.
that breastfeeding is better for babies. So
Right.
then if all these things are happening while you're breastfeeding, then that's what's supposed to be happening. Do you know what I mean?
I understand
Yeah, and you can't change situational stress, right? You can't.
Yeah.
It's not. We can't do that. Even to like night waking, right? Like babies are going to wake up, and so we have to kind of like. First of all, we have to assume that, and this is one of the things when you hear like in the wellness industry, like sleep, right? You have to get 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
You don't have to get 8 hours of sleep all in a row, because if you did need to get 8 hours of sleep all in a row, we would not exist as a species. Because every mother for months at a time, sometimes
Yeah.
years at a time, is not getting 8 hours of sleep in
Yeah.
a row.
I think it's not just the newborn phase.
No.
It goes on
My
forever.
7-year-old sometimes still wakes up, right? Like he has a nightmare, he wakes me up. What do you do, you know? So it's, we have to, are there things that you can do to help protect yourself? You know,
Right.
make yourself more resilient, ways to set things up that are going to make it easier on your body? Absolutely. Should you do those things? Absolutely. But to assume that like stress is going to make you have no milk, or to, you know, don't make these assumptions.